Somewhere, without ever agreeing to it, you started keeping a ledger, not one made of paper, not one you could burn or shred or throw away. This ledger lives somewhere quieter than that, in the space between your thoughts, in the half second before you speak, in the tightening of your chest when you disappoint someone you love. It records everything. Every mistake you made at 9 years old that you swore you'd forgotten. Every time you were too much or not enough. Every apology you gave that wasn't really yours to give. Every time you smiled when you wanted to scream. And here is the strange part. No one asked you to keep this ledger. No one handed it to you and said, "Here, track your worth in this." You built it yourself, page by page, out of moments too small to notice and too heavy to forget. This is a book about that ledger, about finding it, reading it honestly for the first time, and, if you're ready, closing it for good. Chapter 1. Where the ledger begins. Children do not arrive into the world suspicious of themselves. Watch any toddler dance badly in a living room, completely unbothered by how they look. Watch them cry without shame, laugh without permission, ask for what they want without apologizing first. Something happens between that moment and adulthood. Somewhere along the way, we learn to audit ourselves. It usually starts small. A parent's sigh after a bad report card, a sibling's comparison, a teacher's raised eyebrow. None of these moments feel significant on their own, but the mind is a pattern-making machine, and it does not need drama to learn a lesson. It only needs repetition. Slowly, an entry gets written. If I fail, I lose love. Another one follows. If I have needs, I become a burden. And another. If I disagree, I risk being left. These are not conclusions we reason our way into. They are conclusions that happen to us quietly, while we are busy just trying to survive childhood. And once written, they rarely get reviewed. They simply sit in the ledger, shaping every decision that follows. The job we settle for, the partner we choose, the apology we give when we've done nothing wrong. The first step in closing a ledger is admitting it exists, not judging it, not being ashamed of it. Just admitting it's there, quietly running in the background of every relationship, every ambition, every quiet moment alone. Chapter 2. The currency of self-worth. Every ledger needs a currency, some unit it measures value in. For some people, the currency is achievement. For others, it's approval. For others, it's usefulness or beauty or being agreeable or being the strong one who never breaks. Here is the trap. Currencies like these are bottomless. There is no final achievement that silences the ledger permanently. There is no amount of approval that makes the account read, paid in full. The ledger, once built on an external currency, simply keeps demanding more. Because it was never really about the achievement. It was about proving something to a version of yourself that got hurt a long time ago. This is why some of the most accomplished people carry the heaviest ledgers. Success does not erase the entries. It just adds new pressure to maintain them. The way out is not more currency. It's a different kind of accounting altogether. One based not on performance, but on presence. Not on what you produce, but on the fact that you exist at all unconditionally. The way you did before anyone taught you to keep score. Chapter 3. Interest payments. Debts, if left unpaid, accumulate interest. So do the entries in an emotional ledger. A single moment of shame, left unexamined, doesn't stay a single moment. It compounds. The child who felt too loud becomes the adult who shrinks in meetings. The teenager who felt too sensitive becomes the adult who apologizes for crying. What started as one small entry becomes over years an entire operating belief. I am fundamentally too much or not enough. The compounding is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. You don't wake up one day and think, my self-worth has accrued 20 years of interest. You just find yourself at 30 or 40 or 60, exhausted in a way you can't quite explain, paying a debt you don't remember taking out. This is why healing rarely happens through willpower alone. You cannot simply decide to stop paying interest on a debt you don't consciously know exists. The work is first archaeological, digging to find the original entry before it can be corrective. Chapter 4. The Audit. At some point, if you're lucky, or if life forces you to through a breakdown, a loss, a quiet 3 a.m. moment of exhaustion, you begin the audit. This is the hardest and most honest chapter of the work. It asks you to go back through the ledger entry by entry and ask, is this actually true? Or is this just old? I am a burden when I have needs. Is this true? Or is this what a tired, overwhelmed parent once made you feel on one particular Tuesday 20 years ago? I must be perfect to be loved. Is this true? Or is this the residue of a household where love felt conditional on performance? My feelings are too much. Is this true? Or is this what someone said once in a moment of their own pain that had nothing to do with you? The audit is not about blaming anyone, not your parents, not your past, not yourself. It is about separating what is factually true about you now from what is historically inherited and never questioned. Most entries, once actually examined in daylight, do not hold up. They were never really about your worth. They were about someone else's limitations, projected onto you at a moment when you were too young to know the difference. Chapter 5. Writing new entries. Closing an old ledger doesn't mean pretending the past didn't happen. It means you stop letting it set the terms for the present. This is done not through grand gestures, but through small, repeated corrections. Every time you rest without guilt, you write a new entry. Every time you say no without over-explaining, you write a new entry. Every time you let yourself be loved without performing for it first, you write a new entry. None of these moments feel dramatic. They rarely feel like healing while they're happening. But this is how the old ledger actually gets replaced. Not by one big revelation, but by 1,000 small refusals to keep paying an old debt. Chapter 6. The people who inherited a ledger from you. Ledgers are rarely private. Without meaning to, we hand pages of our own ledger to the people closest to us. Our children, our partners, our friends. A parent who believes rest must be earned raises a child who feels guilty on a lazy Sunday. A partner who believes love is conditional on usefulness creates a relationship where both people are quietly performing instead of resting into each other. This is not cruelty, it is inheritance. We pass forward what was never healed in us, not because we want to, but because unexamined pain has a way of repeating itself through the people we love most. This chapter is not meant to induce guilt. It is meant to interrupt the cycle. The moment you notice you are handing someone else a page from your own unexamined ledger, a child, a partner, even a friend, you have the power to stop mid-sentence if you have to, and choose differently. That single pause, repeated enough times, is how generational patterns actually end. Chapter 7. The illusion of the balanced account. There is a quiet lie, the ledger tells you, that one day, if you just do enough, apologize enough, achieve enough, the account will finally balance. You will finally feel once and for all enough. But the ledger was never built to balance. It was built to keep you reaching. This is its function, not its flaw. An account that could actually be settled would lose its power over you, so it never allows settlement. It moves the target. It reframes old wins as no longer sufficient. It finds a new deficiency the moment an old one is resolved. Recognizing this is not cause for despair. It's cause for relief. If the account was never designed to balance, then the failure was never yours. You were not failing to reach enough. You were chasing a finish line that was built to move. The moment you see this clearly, the chase itself starts to lose its grip. Chapter 8. What rest reveals. Rest is where the ledger becomes most visible. This is why so many people find stillness unbearable, not because they are lazy or restless by nature, but because silence removes the noise that usually drowns out the ledger's quiet arithmetic. Sit still for 10 minutes with nothing to produce, no one to please, nothing to prove, and notice what rises. For many people, what rises is not peace. It's a low hum of guilt, an itch to check a phone, a whisper that says you should be doing something. That whisper is the ledger, unguarded. It is the clearest place to study it. because there is nothing else competing for your attention. Learning to sit inside that discomfort without immediately obeying it is one of the most direct ways to loosen the ledger's hold. Not forever, not in one sitting, but slowly, the way any old habit loosens, through repeated, gentle refusal. Chapter 9. Closing an entry without erasing the memory. People often confuse healing with forgetting. They believe that closing an old entry in the ledger means the memory must disappear, the pain must vanish, the past must stop mattering. This isn't true, and chasing it only leads to more frustration. You do not need to forget the moment your work went unnoticed, or the year you felt invisible in your own family, or the relationship that taught you love was conditional. You only need to stop letting that memory set the current price of your worth. For most people, this voice doesn't sound harsh. At first listen, it sounds reasonable. It sounds like caution. It says things like, "Don't get too comfortable," or "You should probably double check that," or "They were just being nice. They don't actually mean it." It rarely screams. It murmurs. And because it murmurs in a tone so familiar, so constant, most people never think to question whether it's telling the truth. This voice was not born with you. It was assembled, word by word, moment by moment, from every authority figure, whoever corrected you, every comparison you overheard, every silence that followed a mistake. Over time, these borrowed voices merged into one internal narrator, and that narrator took over the bookkeeping. The tragedy is not that this voice exists. The tragedy is that most people never realize it's not them. They believe the bookkeeper's tally is simply the truth about who they are. It is not. It is a compilation of old, often outdated, often mistaken judgments, running on autopilot, decades after the people who first spoke them are gone or changed or forgotten. To question the bookkeeper is not to become reckless or self-indulgent. It is to finally separate your actual values from the inherited anxieties that have been impersonating them for years. Chapter 11. The ledger in relationships. Nowhere does the ledger show up more clearly than in how we love and let ourselves be loved. Some people, without realizing it, choose partners who will confirm the ledger's oldest entries, partners who withhold affection just enough to feel familiar, who criticize in ways that echo an old, half-remembered voice. This isn't self-destruction, it's recognition. The nervous system reaches for what it already knows how to survive, mistaking familiarity for safety. Others do the opposite. They find someone who offers steady, uncomplicated love, and they cannot receive it. It feels wrong, undeserved, even suspicious. What do they want from me? What's the catch? The ledger cannot make sense of a gift with no invoice attached, so it invents one. It insists there must be a price, because the alternative, that love could simply be given without being earned, does not compute. Healthy relationships are not built by finding a partner who has no flaws. They are built by two people, slowly, patiently, showing each other that the old ledger's terms do not apply here, that rest is allowed, that disagreement does not mean abandonment, that being loved does not require a performance. This kind of relationship will often feel at first disorienting, not because it's wrong, but because it's unfamiliar. Peace can feel like boredom to a nervous system raised on turbulence. Give it time. The discomfort of safety fades. The discomfort of the old pattern never does. Chapter 12. The ledger at work is often where the ledger hides in plain sight, disguised as ambition. Notice the difference between working toward something and working away from something. Working toward a goal feels expansive. There is a future you're building, and effort feels like construction. Working away from an old feeling, the fear of being seen as lazy, replaceable, not enough, feels like running. It rarely rests. It rarely feels finished, no matter what is achieved, because it was never about the achievement. It was about silencing an old entry that achievement cannot actually erase. This is why promotions, raises, and recognition often provide only temporary relief. They pay down the ledger for a moment, and then the balance reappears because the entry was written in a currency achievement can never fully settle. The question worth asking, quietly, in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday at work is this: if no one was watching and nothing was being proven, would I still choose to do this? The answer doesn't have to change your career, but it will tell you which parts of your effort are yours and which parts are still interest payments on a very old account. Chapter 13. The body remembers what the mind forgets. The ledger is not only a mental record, it lives in the body as well, in a tight jaw during criticism, in a held breath before speaking up, in fatigue that has no clear medical cause. This is because the nervous system does not distinguish between an old threat and a current one. A raised voice today can trigger the same bracing response as a raised voice 30 years ago, because the body's job is not to keep an accurate calendar. It is to keep you safe, using whatever pattern worked before. This is why insight alone is often not enough to close an old entry. You can understand intellectually that an old fear no longer applies, and still feel your chest tighten in the exact same way it always has. The body needs its own kind of evidence. It needs repeated lived experiences of safety, not just the idea of safety, before it agrees to update its old records. This is slow work. It does not happen through a single realization. It happens through hundreds of small moments where the body braces for an old consequence, and the consequence simply does not arrive. Over time, and only over time, the body starts writing new entries of its own. Chapter 14. When the ledger was never yours to begin with. Some entries in the ledger were never actually about you. They were about someone else's exhaustion, someone else's unresolved pain, someone else's fear, simply directed at you because you happened to be nearby, young, and unable to defend yourself against a judgment that wasn't fair to begin with. A parent's harsh word on their worst day was rarely about who you actually were. It was often about who they were struggling to be, in a moment they were not equipped to handle gracefully. This does not excuse the harm, but it does relocate it. It moves the entry from "this is a fact about me" to "this was a moment that happened to me, caused by someone else's limitations." This distinction matters enormously. A fact about yourself must be lived with. A moment that happened to you can be grieved, understood, and eventually set down. Closing, the ledger is yours to keep, or close. You did not choose to start this ledger. A child rarely does, but you are the only one who can choose what happens to it now. You can keep adding to it, quietly, for the rest of your life, measuring your worth against an account that was rigged from the start. Or you can do the harder, quieter work of closing it. Not by destroying the past, but by finally, gently, refusing to let it set today's price. You were never actually in debt. You just believed you were. This is where the audit ends and where you begin.